This is Neil King for Random Acts of Cartooning, and this episode we're going to make a little sketchbook. The theme are characters from kid serials, and this is the first one with Fred and Barney. I'm going to show the actual image, and then I'll show my rendition of it. And it's a dual fold. But before that, okay everyone, so today's influence for this episode is Tank Girl. Now this is just one of many collections that I have of Tank Girl. And I don't know whether, especially when I see things like this, it's a very strong coloring, so I'm not sure if a lot of this was blown out when it was done for this one. But I really love the illustrations. But Jamie Hewlett and Alan Martin are the ones behind Tank Girl, and Hewlett's work is, something that when you see it, you don't forget that style. So whether it's this stuff where it's kind of beginnings and eventually into the Gorillaz illustration for the band and all that stuff, he just has a very specific style, and he made these guys made these comics together. And I thought I'd show the beginning parts because a lot of it, to me, he just uses a lot of technique. And at the time, the publishing the way it was, to say this kind of work was really unique. But so much action and style, and they just went for it for a lot of these issues. I love just all of the way that that he's willing to go in and use all kinds of different techniques with his line. But the graphic design and the character design is just so good. The character's so beautiful. And they play off of a lot of things here with her. You can see what they're doing. Because again, he just evolves into a lot of these amazing things. And so again, the look to me is just something that when you see it, these perfect little, the thick and thin line, the little subtleties to the proportions of the faces, and he really loves all of these types of, interesting architecture and vehicles and stuff. Like you can see, he did a lot of that back then. But I always think about him, and whenever I see certain styles, I'm like, oh, that's very Jamie Hewlett. But Tank Girl, if you've never collected it, lots of stuff out there. I'm sure I'll show more things with the character, and especially the Hewlett's work, especially the Gorillaz too. I got to show some stuff of that. Tank Girl. Okay, so here's the process. What I did was I went over to the supermarket and I bought 3 different types of kids cereals. These are cereals that I even grew up with. Got the boxes. I'm working with an 80-pound watercolor paper, have my ruler, little X-Acto knife, and then we're ready to go. So I'm making these approximately about 5 inches by about 8 inches. Not too big. So here we go. So I chopped the front and the back of that box down, cocoa pebbles, right? And I would do that to each one of the boxes, 5 by 8. Now I have my 80-pound stock, so I'm going to make these long rectangles. I'm going to chop them up, right? And then I'm going to fold them along that part. Now, I want this to be multiple folds, so I could get one piece of paper that's bigger, but I have a lot of this watercolor paper around. So I'm just going to fold these up and get them to the proportions. Now, if you want to, you could get a bigger piece of watercolor paper easily. But this is 11 by 14, this size, so I like it. I use it for sketches and conventions, so I'm using that. And I'm going to get this all folded. Now this is not enough folds, this one paper, so I have to have a second piece to make it long enough for this project. Now I'm putting a little of this Mod Podge stuff on so that I can attach the two pieces of folded watercolor paper. Now in the end, once I do this, I'm going to realize that I needed one less frame, so I'll have chopped that off. So just to give you a heads up, if you're doing this 3-fold and you like the 5x8 size when you make this thing. So you put the Mod Podge thing on there and you double it up. And again, you just try and get it on there, make sure it gets on those edges so it's not wrapping around itself. And it's just like this big accordion piece. So I'm going to take the cover and I'm going to Mod Podge that to the cover. I made the actual paper, the watercolor paper, about a 1/2 inch less on all sides. Or overall, that is actually. So it's a 1/4 inch difference on the outside, so you'll see it's framed. And I could have done even more with the cover. Maybe put a piece of cardboard with it. But I feel like it's pretty thick, that cardboard. So I think as a cover, it holds up pretty nicely. I'm not worried about that. So this is something I would sell at a convention. And I think it's fun because I can just do a lot. I do these kind of sketches all the time. So here I am, and I'm just going to attach that to that cover. Again, you just got to understand, you got to get that folded up so you know that's going to be the way you want it in the end. Like I wanted people to be able to open it and see the first 2 panels, and then flip the page and then see the last 2 panels. So as you can see, I'm putting it right there, making sure it's got about a 1/4 inch around. So here's the book when it's done. Just folds pretty simply. It's all the connection. So I have something to draw on, and this would be a nice little piece to give away at a convention. So here's the image, and the idea is I show the typical Fred and Barney from the Flintstones. And when I was a kid, I used to watch this stuff. The reruns had probably been going on since the 60s. So I remember Fred and Barney, and the Cocoa Pebbles and all that stuff are still very popular. They're in all supermarkets everywhere. So I'm just going to get in all the drawing for this specific characters. And they're great graphic characters. So to me, it's at the first part of it when I'm doing it in the pencil, I'm just trying to lay in the main big parts because, the genius of these characters are that there's just few lines, but it's all proportions. So when you're drawing some character, someone else's character, I'm just trying to get the proportions right. And in the pencil stage, even as I'm drawing it, I'm like, is this right? Is this the right proportion? And I do keep looking back and forth. I have an image of them off the camera so you can't see it. But I'm just kind of getting them in there. And even as I'm drawing it, I'm saying to myself, I don't know, is that wide enough? Do I have to bring that out further? But I'm trying to get them in there before, and just with the pencil. I couldn't have just gone in here with a brush and just drawn them. I never would have gotten it right. And even as I'm drawing again there's going to be touch-ups once I get into the inking stage. So you can see this is the format again. It's a little bit smaller because it's the paper than the 5x8. So it's really 4.5 by 7.5, I believe. So I kind of get them in there. I'm looking at them. I'm like, all right, that looks like Fred. And then I'm going to go for the Barney character. And I'm just really just trying to get a nice resemblance to the characters. At a convention, this is typical. People would come up to me and say, could you draw some character that they loved? And it could be something very new, or it could be something really old, like some type of a character that I would have even remembered from being a kid. But So when you're looking at someone else's creation, you just want to try as much as you can to give the feeling. I can't draw exactly like they did because they are masters at drawing this, and this has been an animated character for so many years. You're talking about 60 some odd years at least, probably, that these characters have been around. But so Barney is a smaller character than Fred, so I just make sure that I bring him down a little bit lower. And again, all I'm doing is getting my pencil work in there to make sure I've got the big stuff done, and that I'll edit my line as I progress through this through the ink stage and then the color stage. Again, big strokes, pretty simple though. I'm getting the graphics in my brain. I'm like, this is where it should be. Looks okay. Now I'm going to go to the next page and I'm going to draw my renditions of them. So this is what I really tend to do in for my sketchbooks, is I'll draw characters that are well known, but I would do them in my style, and it's kind of like a parody of the characters. So my Fred and Barney are going to look more like Neanderthals, and try and make them scary and try and do all that kind of stuff. But you have to keep, to be within the joke, you have to keep the the certain things, whatever their costume is, you have to keep that there. So for me, I just want to, I go in there and have fun with it. I don't have any major preconceived ideas of this. I have to say that this is probably the first time I've done the Neanderthal kind of Fred and Barney. So if I would sell this type of a thing, like I'll have them in, I usually just have a separate sketchbook, and where I have my sketches and people come to the convention, I would just have things like this that I would think would be funny and that maybe somebody would like. So I've done this with, Frankenberry and Count Chocula and Boo Berry. Like, they're very popular. I've done Captain Crunch and some different ones. So I thought it would be nice to create a graphic that combines them, and that you would sell this at a convention. I don't think many people do that. So this is the way I'm going with this. And so I'm just laying in the main parts and making sure that in the end I have enough information there to get to put the pen and ink in, and I'll feel comfortable that the architecture's there, the big shapes, getting to what I want, and I can just add more detail as I go through it. But knowing that you have your big shapes in place and the majority of the detail where you're like, okay, you can see it's kind of a shorthand for me now. I'm like, I'll do more with this nose, I'll do more with those eyes as I come in eventually with the ink. So that's most of it. Just trying to remind myself, right? So now is the ink stage. And I'm going in with just a basic thin brush pen, which I use for so many different things. And I'm trying, it's so hard for me, just to keep that simple, clean line. I feel like for my images that I do for myself, I put so much more texture and stuff into my work that it's hard for me to get that beautiful line. I tend to do it really well when I'm working on the computer with my Wacom tablet, and I just go in and I can just get the swoop of that line. If I was doing this in Photoshop and Clip Studio Paint, where I work for my digital stuff, this would be much easier. But when you have to do it with a brush like this, and it's small, it's hard to get that quick little move. You got to be really confident. So you wind up just going back in and building your line for the thicks and thins lines. Because any of the images that I've seen of these characters, they do have thick and thin line. It's not just one consistent line. So the bottom of that nose, there's a thicker line. And then as you go through, I keep looking, and you can see I'm really editing what I had drawn initially. I'm looking at another picture of Fred, and I'm seeing the way that that top of the mouth is, and I just keep building it up. Like I was surprised at the angle of it. Like I would have thought it was just a swooping line, but that kind of goes off. Like it's a separate stroke, it looks like. And for Fred, you see a little bit of indication of the tongue, and then the other side, again, I'm looking at it. You can't quite see it, but this is how I would do it at a convention. I would have my phone out, and I would just keep looking at the reference that I have. I would change it into a certain parts, like maybe I would have these two, like riding a car or something, or they're dressed like the people who want it. Like there's a million things I could make them Jedi warriors, whatever it would be. I've done it many times, where I take a traditional character and I do a parody off of it. I think it's good to see a character like this, or characters like this, because you see this genius of a line and characters. These are genius characters where they're so graphic and beautiful, but they also have a spontaneity about them too. And that's not easy to do. Like it's seeing Charlie Brown or Linus or those kind of things. And it's the same idea. When you see these two characters that so many people have had to draw, like whoever the original creators were, whatever those first drawings of Fred and Barney were, people have had to come in and change slightly until they found the canon of proportions for characters, and that's what this is. These are two beautiful, masterful characters of pop culture, and they've lived for this long because they're so good. Like you can't get better than the way that, and they made a bunch of characters that were the Hanna-Barbera stuff that had this look. So they ruled the world for a long time with, when I was a kid, before I was even probably around, they had already started. And they just make these beautiful things. Like that character is so, and the creators or the animators who do them now would do this so much better than I. They just have a feel, and if you draw characters like this, it's like watching, I was bringing up Schultz drawing Charlie Brown or Snoopy. It's just the most beautiful thing to watch somebody who has no problem. They would be able to have drawn these characters, no pencil lines most probably. They would just gone in and drawn it. And it would look beautiful and spontaneous, and the work has already been done. The design of the characters is already there. So again, I'm looking back and forth, trying to do my best to make sure that Barney's hair is kind of the way it is. It's almost weird. It's almost like a comb over, the way that they have it. And but it's really simple, and it's just all technique. I like how they have that little couple pieces of hair on both of the characters that just sticks up, and it just gives this, it's just beautiful. And as a graphic design, it's what I look at. It's not even all about the drawing of the character. It's a graphically beautiful character. It's like Mickey Mouse, like is there another illustration out there than Mickey Mouse that is as beautiful because of its simplicity, and that they took some kind of a thing and that generations can enjoy that beautiful graphic design that they created. So coming down to the end of these guys, it's all about color also with these guys. They really pop once you put their specific colors in. And So that's kind of the look at this point of these guys. And what I'll do is, it's a little touch up. I think I remembered all that. It's a little stitching that he has on him. And just that those little touches are the things that I'm hoping will make it go over. So for me, when I'm doing a sketch at any convention, this is usually what I'll do. I'll go in, I'll be like, yeah, these are cavemen, and I'm going to make them scary cavemen. So I just kind of get in there and go after them. I have, like I was saying, I have no preconceived idea. I think if I would draw these guys again, they would look completely different the next time. But this was my initial feeling of, oh, this is what it could be. So I go right in with this, and I start laying in some detail around those eyes, make them nice and scary, nice and shadowy. And then, I'll go in and put that big brow like you would have for a Neanderthal, and just kind of get in there. At first, like, I'm getting these feelings like what should they be doing and what should they be kind of thinking. So I just want to make them like this, a little scary. And then I'll start giving them all these little things like some hair, a little beard almost. And knowing that eventually I'm going to have the color to be able to really give that dry brush feel that I like to do for my convention sketches when I'm doing like fearsome characters. That you're supposed to get, create mood or create drama. And so when I'm doing this, the brush part, it's really me just realizing I'm like, I should put a certain amount in here, but not too much that it kind of stops me from, getting a different type of a feel when I do my my color. Because the color I'll add black to the watercolors, and then I get a whole nother level of feeling that no matter what I do with this, a lot of this might kind of go away because I may go on top of it with color so that you're barely seeing some of these details. So I don't want to go too far with this because I have no idea how far I'm going to go once I kind of get in there and do the detail work with the color. So I'm going on either side. I keep thinking to myself, I was like, can't forget that he's Fred and that I have to put on his little tie and I have to put on like his orange tunic, whatever you would call it. Like that's got to be there. It's going to be in tatters and all, but I want to make him hairy. I want to make him, big, like these huge arms. He's a really strong guy, and kind of get as far away from the original characters as I can. Like but the way that you'll read it is that you come in and you'll see that orange tunic that he has on, and but he's kind of moving towards us, like he's coming towards us, and then Barney will be next to him. And you'll recognize him because of his brown tunic and his kind of orangey yellow hair. So just making some really big arms, menacing. I'll do more detail, but I know it's going to come later. So I don't want to overdo it because I haven't even gone in with my dry brush pen that I use for so many things. I'm in on Barney at this point. All contrast. And again, I'm just trying to make the texture. So when you do this and when somebody would see it, they'll feel that it's not just a super clean image. Like I can do those types of images, but for this, because I want them to be a little scary, I want it to be way more texture. So I do wind up getting closer to more of a horror type of aspect when I'm doing this kind of stuff. So still, but having fun, and I'm just like kind of going in there. I want to make them a little scary, give them some teeth, as if he's coming towards us. And especially with this one, because he's behind Fred, I'm just going to just put the barest amount of detail that I can. I just have to make sure that I know where he ends and know where that his tunic's coming in, and then I'll get those hands on a club. I think in the cartoon I think Barney oftentimes will have this club. So I thought I'd put that in. But as the original characters, you could never imagine being scary. But these, if you do them in a different way, it definitely has that little sense of fear that you would have when you see something like this. And that's kind of, the way that I look at it. So I'm kind of going in again, lots of little detail. Haven't even gone in with my brush pen. And I'm not going to do too much with the brush pen because, again, I just see having the chance with color to make this thing really kind of work. And with this series, which is kind of how I see it, as a little series of these cereal box characters, that somebody could come up and they could see it and they'd be like, oh, yeah, that's, it's obviously this or that. So I have, after this one, I'd like to do the Captain Crunch one and the Lucky Charms one because they're well-known characters too. So to finish it off, again, I'm just coming in with my real dry brush. And I do lots of different stuff with this. But what it usually is to get that raw effect that I really like for my convention sketches and for any kind of characters who I'm dealing with, even with my own characters that I create. Even though I tend to do most of my stuff digitally because it's easier to get all the processes down. I do draw a lot of my characters still like this. But this is a much different, when you're coming in with this much dark, you got to be careful. But to me, this is how the whole thing really works. It really sings because of this, the effect of coming in with a very large brush and then getting in these little details. Terrifying characters. Remember, everyone, I am a working cartoonist, so make sure that you're using the links to some of the different stuff that I am selling. These are convention sketches, and I will be doing, and I'm always doing conventions, so if you ever see me out there, or I also do commissions. But here's some of my adult books, graphic novels. I do kid stuff too. But take a look on my Amazon store, and these are all for sale. And like I say, I do a certain amount of commission work. So if you're interested in some of the things that I've been posting, it's all there. Support me. Like and subscribe, of course, as always. Okay, so now on to the color. So I have the characters. It's all dry. When you're using these kind of markers, they tend to dry pretty quickly. I'm just using my typical, I use this simple semi-moist watercolors, and I just make my colors really quickly. I'm just doing, I wish I had it actually a little closer. You can see how I'm combining my colors. But for cartoons, it's pretty, cartoony flesh tone, right? So I'm trying to get it in there, going right in, pushing all this stuff around. I don't want to over render any of this. So usually if I was going to do something with my watercolors, I would have a light and a medium and a dark, or I would leave right to an edge, a super highlight that I would use. But with these guys, I want to keep them really flat, and I'm trying to stay by the color pretty closely that I see that I'm watching on this. I have the image of these two characters and what they look like. I've seen these characters look slightly different sometimes, so that you'll see a little bit of different orange for Fred's tunic, and it's that part. This part I'm trying to mix right now is for both of them, where it's not fleshy and it's not brown, but it's supposed to be like, to me, like unshaven, like a representation for it, and it really works. Like when you look at the characters, it's almost like that 5 o'clock shadow, thing that they have all the time. I think that's what it's supposed to represent, instead of just flesh. Like, why wouldn't they just make that flesh? So for all the men characters, they tend to have this thing where it's a different color. It's not the pink, and to see it on the video like this, it's a little bit more brownish orange than that. So I'm going in with Barney's hair, which is like a yellow orange. It's not a true yellow. So I mixed a little red with a yellow that I have. Sometimes I'll just add because it's a simple palette that I'm working with. I can just, there's an orange color there. And I just, to do this kind of a thing, it's weird for me, because usually I'm just like, well, that's my first layer, and I'm going to come back on top. But for this is the color. I'm going in flats and just making sure that all of the colors are similar. So Barney has that brown. I'm just laying it in with a nice little coat of brown. I'm not overdoing it. I don't want anything to be too strong. That line will carry it because it's so strong. And I switch over for Fred's tie. So as always, these great characters, it's complementary colors, that the blue and the orange, and it works great. And Barney's kind of neutral because of that brown. So when you look at all these things together, you're seeing how, when they have these characters next to each other, why they work really well. But again, just going in, and I'm going to put, Fred's hair is black. So I'm trying to make it not as flat black. So I'm going, imagine it's next level gray, like it's pretty dark gray. And I'm just kind of going in there and getting them in. No problems with this. Trying to stay nice and clean. You want that style to pop through. I feel like if I overdid it, it would push them away from what they actually are. I'll give them a little bit of a background color. I'll try and clean that black off. That's what I'm doing there, is some water, and I'm just clearing that brush off as much as I can. And I have this kind of like a little magenta for the background. So it'll bring the two characters together because they're next to each other. And the colors kind of go nicely with that magenta. And it's just sets it up. Really simple. Nothing to keep your eye from going away from the two major characters. Their line is going to overpower any color that I put on top of this thing. So when I'm doing it, that's all I'm really kind of looking for, is something that could combine them so that they feel like they're together in the same place, not two separate images of the characters, as if they're separate portraits, I guess. That's them. All right, so that's that side. Now we got to go after these guys. Now with this, it's a little more intense with the color. It takes longer
because the way I handle color with these kind of characters is that it's just layers of pigment. So I may start off with their cartoony flesh tone, but I'll probably add some browns and some reds and some, eventually I'll put magenta in them too. Anything that could bring them together and have an overall feel that you can consistently see. So again, it's like, to me, this is so typical the way I work with color at Sketches. And that's what's fun about it, is that you introduce some other colors into all of them. But I rarely just stay with one. I'll go right over to the next, and I'll be like, all right, I'm going to add a little of this to both their flesh, and it gives way more depth to the illustration. And every time I'm working like this, I have very little fear of where it's going, because at the end I'm going to take some black and water it down and then add the final layer. So the bottom layers have to be your original colors, because I can even keep them really bright on him and know that I'm going to pull that value way down once I go on top of it. So it's very orangey now, but that orange is going to disappear to a certain amount once I kind of come back in and deal with it. So I know Barney's cloak is going to be brown, but it would be nice to have a little of the orange from Fred in Barney's brown. So I'm never just thinking in one place when I'm doing the color. That's why it's a very bright yellow, but I know it's not going to be that way forever. It's kind of like having a bottom color when you start off a painting, and to have everything blue behind, or the ochres or the umbers underneath. So for me, when I work with watercolors, I'll just put in all of these colors around, knowing that you'll just see it. Maybe you won't see it really strongly, but it's to unify the whole image eventually, once I kind of get further along. And here I am adding some browns, getting it closer to what the color of his cloak would be. All over the place. Give him a little bit around into his face. The club, I think in the actual animated part, they're brown. It could be a little orange, I think, in the animated one, who knows. And again, here I am moving around. Give a little brown into Fred's cloak, into his hands, into his beard. Right? I also have to eventually deal with the blue of his tie, which is got to be there with this Neanderthal. It's not, the whole comedy of it is that they're still wearing the same uniforms. So that burst of blue on top of the orange really says Fred. So I'm going to continue that magenta background that I did with the guys on the front. So when you flip the page, that's the continuity between the front and the back. I don't think it's hard to see what I'm doing with the two of the things. I could have done something slightly different, but I think as a graphic, it's wise to keep them similar. And so you read it even more that it's the traditional image of them, and then the modified parody image of them on that. And this is the watercolor part where I'll put some of that magenta in them. So it just reads, and you feel it, and it gives it a lightness, and that's what watercolor can be. It's great to be able to just kind of throw a color in, knowing again that it's just the base color and that you'll perceive of the color, but it's not like it's going to overwhelm the design in any way. So I'm getting closer here now that I've kind of gotten a lot of that stuff in, and now I'm going to black that I water down. And this is all the darker values, the shadowy part of it. So all the colors are there on the bottom, but once you put this on, then I tend to get very aggressive with it and just try to make these guys look as kind of fearsome as I can. I wouldn't use black for everything, every convention sketch, but a lot of times convention sketches tend to be these types of things. People like to see these aggressive characters, and for me, I'm just bringing down that magenta with the black, and I'm just going right through. I'm going to keep adding, and it's the hardest part to end because you're never sure where to end it. But with like Fred, I know that what I want to do is make enough information here that you still see him as Fred because of those oranges, but then it's this kind of scary, caveman, Neanderthal kind of guy that I had the initial idea to do. Now, when you're doing this also, I want to bring that hand up closer, and by putting all this in, the hand will pop a little bit further on top of there. So I know Fred has black hair, so I'm going to slowly give him more and more darkness into that hair, knowing that by the end it'll all be there, be pretty black. But see, what I'm trying to do is that hand. I want the hand to come in front of the cloak. I don't want it to get caught up into it. So it's contrasted the lightness of the hand compared to the darker medium tone behind it. So now the hand pops out in front of the cloak. So again, like at this point, all I can say is I'm never sure when it should end, but it's all feel, and I eventually decide when I should do some kind of a thing, when I should finish it off, add a little bit more line perhaps or something. But every time I squint my eyes and I try to see what it is that I'm trying to do. And again, it's just a little parody piece. I'm not doing anything with these characters. It's all just feel, and that somebody else would get the joke and be interested in it. That's what the thing about artists do. We try to see maybe sometimes things with pop culture or play off of ideas, and I'm always very interested in doing that. I love animation. I love film and all this kind of stuff, and to do pieces like this, it combines all my interests, and know that everybody else is in on the joke, and that they see it and they're like, oh yeah, I see what you're trying to do here. It's funny. I'm not trying. You try to relate these characters to different things, and that's what I think is always funny. Like I love the Flintstones, but a piece like this is just, like I say, just parody, and if you use technique with it, it can really bring it onto a different kind of level. And I think for my stuff, if people like it, I mean, it's not for everybody, but I try to make it interesting instead of just a simple line by doing the color. And I just don't get an opportunity to do something like this that often. Like I wouldn't do this professionally, So when people view this, they're kind of just viewing something that they don't see that often, and they'll get something out of it. Every time I do this, I'll see things, and I'll be like, like I said, the great thing about doing convention sketches is I've drawn characters dozens and dozens and dozens of times, but they're rarely exactly the same. Like I try to, every time I draw Batman, I'll draw him differently, as much as in my mind I am. And then something like this too, like I know if I was going to draw these two again, they wouldn't necessarily be in this pose. I kind of, because I do comic books and comic strips and all kinds of stuff, to me that's it's just one panel of many panels, so that when you're drawing things like this, you're not like, well, Fred is always kind of grabbing towards us, or Barney's right behind. But this, like I could mess with the graphic part to it. So I'm kind of coming to the end of this, and you always know that when I get to the brush after all the color, and I'm bumping up lines, cleaning up areas, because I'm trying to get that contrast. If I don't see it, I want to bump it up with the line. And there it all kind of goes. There he is. A little more. And behind it to get little shadows, get those teeth. I like the teeth. I think it's successful. I thought it's really fun, and I think as a novelty piece for someone to get at a convention, I don't think there are many like this. So almost finished now. Little touches. Just want everybody to be able to see at the end exactly what I'm trying to do here. Again, I like it. The fold, it's like a Japanese scroll. Like you're supposed to read every part of it. It's different. Like you kind of get in on the joke, and when you turn the page, you see the next part of it. And you don't get that with sketches often. So I'd like to make more of these, because I think it's just fun to do. All right, so you see the one, and then compare it to the other. And that's the fun of it, right? You turn the page and it goes on there. All right, so this is the finished piece, front and back. That's the back of the box, and this is the front of the box. And then again, you see the characters separately. So if you're just reading it like a regular book, you open it up and you see the terrifying Fred and Barney, right? But then you could see them together as a presentation, right? Really simple, homemade. Hope you enjoy it. Like and subscribe.